Born on December 1st, 1949 in Antioquia, Colombia, to an extremely poor family, his criminal career began after being forced to leave university as he was unable to pay the fees required. He and his brother allegedly began by stealing gravestones. He became a millionaire at the young age of 22, and his rise to power continued until he became head of the infamous Medellin cartel. Known as one of the most notorious drug lords of all time, he was driven and ambitious to either obtain what he wanted or die trying. Pablo Escobar, exploring the edge of legality.
On July 1, 1973, United States President Richard Nixon signed off on the establishment of the Drug Enforcement Agency, or DEA. The goal is to have a federal agency working to fulfill America's efforts to put a stop on the abuse and import of illegal drugs. He dramatically increased the size and presence of federal drug control agencies and pushed through measures such as mandatory sentencing and no-knock warrants. The number of people behind bars due to nonviolent drug offenses increased from 50,000 to 400,000. The proportion of Americans polled who saw drug abuse as the nation's number one problem was just 2 to 6%. President Nixon had officially declared a war on drugs.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse.
Pablo Escobar started out as a street criminal since he couldn't afford an education. He was young, driven, and ambitious. His drive unfortunately began to find the wrong outlets, and he soon encountered and was quickly involved in small-time hustling with his gang in the streets of Medellin. The increase of wealth and power led him to stealing cars. Supposedly, while still at school, Escobar would steal tombstones from the local graveyards, sandblast off the names, and sell them to Panamanian smugglers.
After encountering and interacting with several other local yet powerful drug traffickers, Escobar formed the Medellin cartel with the Ochoa Vasquez brothers. Prior to this relationship, Escobar and his associates were already involved in the drug trade, smuggling cocaine into the U.S. When the well-known Medellin drug dealer Fabio Restrepo was murdered in 1975, Escobar became head of the Medellin cartel, and his brother, Roberto, handled the accounts. It was believed that Escobar had arranged for Restrepo's murder for this end.
I'm a decent man who exports flowers, Pablo Escobar.
Drug trafficking routes, wealth, and enemies of all the cartel members increased rapidly. One of the cartel members even took over an island in the Bahamas, using the island as a station to refuel between Colombia and the U.S.
Like I said at the beginning, when he started, he helped a lot, but once he started being really bad, he hurt a lot of people.
While managing his criminal enterprises, Escobar used some of his drug money to help the community, building relationships with the poor and local Catholics. He was elected to the National Congress as a member of the Colombian Liberal Party, but was later out soon after public officials accused him of being a drug trafficker.
Meanwhile, in the United States, on March 9, 1982, around 3,748 pounds of cocaine was found in Tampa International Airlines warehouse at the Miami airport. It was the largest seizure of cocaine to date. This sparked more enforcement and realization that Colombia criminal elements had banded together.
Escobar soon controlled more than 80% of cocaine shipped into the U.S. It got to the point where he was spending $2,500 a month just on rubber bands to bind his money together.
With his own factories and an entire fleet of aeroplanes and ships, including 2 radio-controlled submarines, it has been estimated that Escobar smuggled 70 to 80 tons of cocaine from Colombia to America per month, and as much as 11 tons in each flight. In order to launder the drug money, the Medellin cartel controlled a large amount of crooked white-collar workers, such as bankers, lawyers, and extended family.
Tons of drugs were being exchanged between Colombia and the United States through drug trafficking routes formulated by Escobar and other cartel members.
On March 10, 1984, in the Colombian jungle, DEA agents and the Colombian police uncover a massive drug manufacturing operation. The dismantling of the plant, called Tranquilandia, signaled the beginning of the war on drug cartels. Sometimes I feel like God. When I order someone killed, they die the same day. Pablo Escobar.
Escobar quickly began to obtain enemies in government positions, including Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, the Colombian Minister of Justice. These enemies made it difficult for Escobar to conceal his drug trafficking identity. Escobar arranged the assassination of Bonilla, DEA agent Enrique Camarade, Barry Seals, Carlos Galán Sarmiento, and Cesar Gaviria Trujillo, just because they were a danger to his identity being uncovered. Armed guerrillas stormed the Palace of Justice in Bogota, Colombia in 1985. This resulted in the deaths of over 100 people, including government officials. A former mistress of Pablo Escobar testified that he had financed the attack in an attempt to steal files.
Escobar kept obtaining power. He was even included in Forbes magazine Richest List. He was estimated to be valued at $3 billion. Colombian government and DEA agents were catching on to the cartel's activities. One by one, cartel members were either turning themselves in or being caught and arrested. Some went to American prisons, some went to Colombian prisons, some agreed to testify against others to shorten their sentences, and some went to maximum security prisons.
The Medellin cartel was becoming so powerful, people were beginning to take notice. A guerrilla group in Colombia called M19, consisting mostly of students, began kidnapping drug traffickers or their family for ransom. M19 kidnapped Martha Nieves Ochoa, the sister of the Ochoa brothers. In retaliation, Pablo Escobar created a group called Death to Kidnappers, or MAS. MAS worked with the police to capture, torture, and kill all M19 members. M19 essentially ceased to exist in 1990.
Following the Colombian government's vote to ban extraditing criminals to the U.S. in 1991, Escobar turned himself in under the condition that his punishment be lenient and that the U.S. would not extradite him, for that was his worst fear. I prefer to be in the grave in Colombia than in a jail cell in the United States. Pablo Escobar.
The activities of Pablo Escobar and the Medellin cartel was the first and biggest major encounter of cocaine transport across 3 countries. He was exporting 33,060 pounds a day on average. He controlled 80% of the cocaine trade in the world. Pablo Escobar also encountered the complication of having to hide the fact that he was a drug lord from the public and government eyes.
Pablo Escobar surrendered himself in exchange for the ability to build his own jail. 6 months of secret negotiations brought a deal with the Colombian government. The deal involved Escobar going to jail. However, the prison would be built to his specifications on 300 acres of land that he had bought in preparation of a possible agreement with the state. As a part of the arrangement, he would also have the right to choose his guards and communicate with his family, as well as high-class furniture and accommodations. In exchange, Colombia would have Escobar in prison for 5 years. Escobar's bombings and bribes have pushed the state to the point of collapse in the 1980s. His imprisonment meant that there would be some peace for a limited amount of time. This deal of Escobar in exchange for his own jail was a large step in the takedown of drug traffickers in Colombia.
The DEA and Colombian police departments explored satellite and other tracking methods to locate Pablo Escobar after he escaped from prison. Since he was in hiding, police used different methods, including tapping phone lines. On December 2, 1993, Colombian police intercepted a phone conversation between Escobar using radio triangulation technologies. During the call, Pablo's son pinpointed his location in a Medellin apartment block. Outgunned, Escobar attempted to flee via the rooftops. However, he was shot multiple times before he could escape.
Pablo Escobar had a major impact on Colombia. The violence increased dramatically as the wealth and power of the cartels increased. As drugs were being exported, weapons and money were being imported into Colombia, which added to the violent atmosphere. The Colombian citizens were constantly on alert for bombings, shootings, or kidnappings, as the drug cartels were always trying to kill each other. Despite his bountiful donations and support towards the poor communities of Colombia, his detrimental effects are still evident in Colombia today. He killed more than 4,000 people, that included murdering 200 judges, 1,000 policemen, journalists, and government workers in his rise to power. He operated under a policy called Plato o Plomo, which literally signifies take the money or take the bullet. He bribed judges, policemen, juries, and innumerable government officials with money to help him out, and he took the lives of ones that refused to cooperate with him or go against him. Due to his actions, the government and other departments were corrupted.
There are 200 million idiots manipulated by 1 million intelligent men. Pablo Escobar.
He killed a lot of people. He destroyed a lot of families. And in my opinion, he wasn't good.